Hi, this is Hans Finzel. Today I want to talk to you about why is it so frustrating to work through committees. You may be on the supervisory end of that thing where you've called a committee together that just won't get the job done, or perhaps more often you've been on a committee that just didn't get the job done. Someone said a camel is a horse designed by a committee. Fred Allen says a committee is a group of the unprepared appointed by the unwilling to do the unnecessary. My own experience recently, I was asked at my church to be on a committee to work on a big problem involving change, and that's what many committees get organized for, to solve problems. We met weekly, we met for several months, we met for over half a year, and eventually we quit meeting. And guess what? We solved nothing. It was very frustrating. I think I was the only person that actually attended every single meeting. In fact, one of the frustrations was a parade of different people in the committee meetings every time. And so the next committee was catch-up time to catch up the people that weren't at the last meeting, and then you talk over and over the same things again and again. I was so frustrated. I was so relieved when the pastor said, "We're not going to do this committee anyway. We're going to take a different direction." Why are so many great ideas killed with committees? Why don't committees tend to get any great work done? Have you been in this situation either as a member or as a convener? I happen to think this is a unique problem in ministries, churches, and nonprofits. Because in the business world, honestly, and a lot of the business people I've talked to, they don't have the luxury to take the time to talk things over forever because the clock is ticking and they're having to watch their bottom line and make a profit. But don't take this the wrong way. A church and a ministry and a nonprofit can in many ways be like the government. They're really not going to go out of business no matter how ineffective they might be. As long as you can make people feel pretty good, they're going to keep giving and they're going to keep the thing going. But committees are one of the worst things that ever happened to a church. I have a friend who was asked recently to be on a media and technology committee in his church. The pastor has a vision to expand the reach of the church. Bravo! That's what a church ought to be doing. Expanding its reach, expanding its influence, reaching more people. So the pastor pulled together a group of about a dozen people specifically to think about how can we expand the reach of our church through media and technology. Well, needless to say, the thing did not work. Meetings went on for weeks and months and months, and my friend was so frustrated because every idea he threw up to the committee, people loved and they embraced the idea. Wow, we should do that, but nothing ever got done and nothing ever got decided. And it went on and on and on. And my friend said, why would they reject my great ideas and not accomplish anything when they said they were great ideas? And that is the problem with giving, that's the point of giving a big problem to a committee. Committees, by their very nature, work against getting things done. It's the wrong plan for solving problems. Here's some things that I see with the problem with most committees. It's the wrong plan to solve a problem. You get too many people on committees. You get the wrong people on committees. You get too much talking on committees. I've been in many situations in nonprofits and churches where I've said, we're just gumming this stuff to death. We are just talking endlessly. It kind of gets exacerbated in local churches because a lot of the leadership, they're theologically trained, God bless them. And in seminary, we learn to just dialogue to death about whatever topic. And so there's so much talking, and not action. It's interesting that in a church situation, if you have a committee that's a mixture of church staff and then lay people, I don't know if the church people realize the conflict is because the church staff is paid to sit there in those committees, but the lay people are not paid to be sitting there in those committees. So two different perspectives. One person is saying, well, it's my job. I don't care if we talk about, I want to get things done, but we can talk endlessly because I'm on the clock. I'm getting paid by the church. But the business people or the lay people are sitting there thinking, I'm a volunteer. I want to solve this problem and get on with it. There's no real attention in committees to a bottom line. And one of the problems with committees is they lack authority to really act. Committees aren't empowered with authority. I've never seen a committee really empowered with great authority to act. That's one of the problems. They'll talk things to death, and maybe they'll eventually make some recommendations, and then those recommendations may or may not be attended to. Very little results. Fred Allen also said a committee is a group of people who individually can do nothing, but as a group they decide that nothing can be done. And how many committees finally decide nothing can be done? Well, you probably figured out I'm not big on committees, so here's my solution. I would ask the question, why have committees? Sometimes I think people just appoint committees because they think that's the way to solve problems. I would say fundamentally, bottom line, committees are not the way to solve problems. The only purpose of a committee would be like if you have a finance committee or a board governing committee, somebody to oversee the finances, people who oversee elections, legal things like that, you need committees. But to solve problems, you don't do it with committees. They're not necessary. Committees are not the way to solve problems. And by the way, the more complex a problem, the less likely a committee could ever solve it. And the more they get gummed up. I love what Ross Perot said years ago. If you see a snake, just kill it. Don't appoint a committee on snakes. So my solutions would be, number one, don't have committees. They're not necessary, other than the legally required committees. Instead, you can appoint a small task force if you want to get a group of people together to solve a problem. Small, did you hear what I said? It's very important. You appoint a small task force of the right people to tackle the problem. By right people, I mean don't put incompetent people or people that they may be competent in their field, but they don't know a thing about the topic of this committee. So I'm a big fan of a task force, not a committee. And one of the very natures of a task force is it has a short timeline. It has a beginning and it has an end. The worst thing you can do is to appoint an open-ended committee to work on a problem. It should have a timeline. I like 3 months maximum. Keeping that timeline short and making sure you have a beginning and an end, because Murphy's Law says that work expands to fill the time allotted to it. So if you appoint an open-ended committee, you guys need to work on this problem, let me know if you can come up with something. Without a timeline, the work will just go on and on and on, and the talking will go on and on and on, and the gumming things to death, especially again in a nonprofit where you don't have a bottom line that's nipping at your heels. You can just let things go on and on so much longer than they need to. So have a beginning and an end. And if people know we have to solve this problem in 3 months, the problem will be solved in 3 months. And if it's not, kill the task force and try something else. In fact, here's my number 4. The rule of thumb, give the problems and the tasks to individuals, not to committees. People solve problems, not committees. So rule of thumb, finally, appoint the right people with the right expertise to solve the right problems. And empower people to get problems solved. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you for listening. Go to hansfinzel.com to check out my Leadership Answer Man podcast and other great resources for taking your leadership to the next level.